Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Planning and Zoning, what am I doing here? Meeting for March 4th, 2021. Sorry, running a little bit late tonight, but we'll get this. So we have a quorum tonight. We have on Zoom, we have Paul Roberts and Julia Latham, Philip Schumacher, and Sonia Rothstein. And in person, we have Jeremy Hooper, Jack Farrell, David Alsmora, and Matt Jones. So we do have a quorum and we can conduct business tonight. We will be following the agenda, and the first items on the agenda are the approval of minutes. So we will start with the regular meeting minutes from February 4th. Do we have any questions or corrections for the February 4th? I had a couple corrections that I sent to Kelly and said that Leo Santawasa was the person that, and it should have been Joel Schreibert, that opened up the first vice president position for Jeremy. So we made that correction. And then, Kelly, how many were that voted against comments? There were 2 comments, and the minutes had said 3 comments. So did anyone else have any corrections? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as modified for February 4th regular meeting?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from February 4th as amended.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is approve the minutes for the February 18 special joint meeting with the council. Have any comments or questions, corrections for those minutes? I have a motion to approve. Anyone?
Move to approve the meeting minutes from the February 18th special joint meeting.
We have a motion by Jack Farrell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jeremy Hooper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We approve those. So the next item on our agenda is general business. And there are 2 items that we want to discuss there. One is the training, and the other one is updates to the PDO. And this meeting, we have a Board of Adjustment meeting that starts at 4:30. So before we get into this, I wanted to see if everyone is okay with continuing this meeting. We'll recess for Board of Adjustment and then come back and finish this discussion. Are you, those on Zoom, are you okay with that as well?
Yes.
What time do you think you'll be through with the meeting?
I have no idea. You can just keep keep the meeting up, turn off your video and your microphone, and you'll be able to tell when the meeting is over, would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Okay? So we will recess this meeting at approximately 4:30 to give IT an opportunity to set up for Board of Adjustment, and then we'll come back after. Okay? All right. So I will turn it over to Alex, who is going to take care of training, I think, first.
Right, so really the intent for both of these topics today, we'll go a little bit further into topic 2 here in a minute, but it's just to kind of work on identifying some some needs either that staff has and they can ask and lean on the board for some assistance. And conversely, you know, a lot of the discussion or part of the discussion we had when the joint meeting with Village Council was, obviously, as staff looks to a more systematic way to provide training to all our advisory boards. But in the interim, if there are some items that this board feels they would like to have some sort of specific training on, staff can begin looking at opportunities, looking at resources or other sources we can gather to kind of get that prepared. Obviously, we discussed this at the joint meeting with council. The current pandemic has put a hamper on ability to really do some of the more routine trainings that have been offered, especially by the School of Government, you know, that they have every other year on alternating basis. I obviously sent a very rudimentary, I called it Variance 101, out to you guys earlier today. If there's some staff-led training on certain topics that you guys would like to see, we can certainly do that. We have all the technology abilities to go over some modules, go over some specific topics. But really, we're kind of here to listen to this board and see if you guys can come to a consensus on a topic, and then maybe a platform and how you think you can best be served in receiving some of that training, and then we can really start to get to work on that.
I know one thing that I would like is the next time you onboard a new member, that the members who have not gone through the current onboarding process would have an opportunity to go through that, because it seems much more comprehensive than what I personally went through.
And just from looking though, Cindy, it looks like it may just be you and Julia. And Paul, help remind me, did I do your onboarding?
Briefly, but it was very good, the time spent.
Okay. But I mean, and I will welcome and I will open my office up to any one-on-one, two-on-one, consistency statements were one that I did on a sort of one-on-one basis about a year and a half ago. And I think a lot of you guys felt that I went over how staff prepares a staff report, how we craft it as a tool to try to help you guys. And, you know, Cindy, I'm sorry to keep using you as an example, but you were ready, willing, and able to make motions, but you felt like you were getting so tripped up by the statutory requirement of these consistency statements. So then we implemented a different process, and I showed and met down with each board member on how we could see that working, and I think it's worked well. So if it's even a small topic as that, but it could really pay big dividends when we get in these type of situations. If it's on remote meetings during the you know, it's a state issued emergency, you know, if it's anything that this group would like to see, I'll be glad to. If it's got to be a one-on-one, two-on-one, if we come here in Assembly Hall, if we do something virtual, whatever, we can make just about anything happen. We've got, I can lean on Kelly if it's something we can even invite some of our other advisory boards into the HPC if we're, you know, going to talk more about evidentiary hearings. We can make it a joint effort.
So would you do that during a regular meeting, if you, or would you
We could call a
schedule that?
special meeting if we needed to. If it would be an off meeting date, we could do a special meeting and do training. We've done that before. So there's a topic and what you guys do in your roles as planning and zoning board. If it's something for just basic board procedure, if it's legislative hearings, if it's more about text amendments, more about map amendments, conditional zoning, variances, evidentiary hearings, appeals of staff decisions. You got to think about what your charge, what your duties are, what you're set statutorily to do, and advise to village council if there's something you feel like you need. If there's been some talk about training on the current PDO, I can go through the applicable sections and how it works for you guys and what you should be expected when you're on this side of the table and you have applications before you and reviewing those sections of the PDO.
I think it would be helpful if we have something coming up. So we're going to have 2 buildings for the resort and for the USGA coming up this year. And it might be nice to just have some kind of a review as to what's expected of us during those public hearings and
So-
what to be looking for.
We expect those to be conditional district rezoning, so we can definitely focus heavily on, because there's some confusing terminology out there. There's conditional district, conditional use district, that has corresponding special use permits that are typically quasi-judicial in nature because they're subjective standards. Conditional district legislative hearings are where the applicant can propose certain conditions and where that applies to in our development ordinance, because it's very specific about what conditions can be imposed, what conditions can be asked, and how that process plays out. If new recommended conditions are thrown out there, how staff would like to have an opportunity to review those. I can take you guys on a site visit to a project that is currently under construction right now that can show you how negatively throwing a condition on at the fly can be problematic. I think because of what we know we're coming up, I think that's a good topic we could look at, is conditional district rezoning.
And I would add that the conditions, just add on what you said, Alex, is, some of those conditions, what is the P and Z's prerogatives when it comes to the type of conditions that can be placed on a request? So I think we really need some additional, staff discussion on that, some board discussion as we go forward with some of these more important, or some of these larger projects that are coming forward. Because Alex, right, there's some conditions that we're in the act of administering right now. The Winston Pines fence is one of the issues that recently came to mind, that, that sometimes when we put a condition on it, it has unintended consequences from an administrative standpoint. So I think that's something that we need to help you a little bit as far as giving you some additional explanatory, some additional educational material. Sorry, it's Max. Just
I know. Can't we take them off if we're 6 feet apart? But is it still likely that the resort hotel will come up in
Yes.
April?
There's a good chance.
I think there's about 2 weeks for things to be able to fall into place in
Yeah.
time enough for the required notices. So within 2 weeks, we should know for certain what date you guys will be expected to have a public hearing on the Pinehurst Resort Lodge conditional district rezoning.
So if it's not going to be until May, can we have some training in April on that?
I think that might be an opportunity to segue somewhat into the next topic we're going to talk about when we're talking about subsequent meetings of the month and how that schedule can play out, and see what kind of availability you all have, staff has, and maybe meeting space. But there's ways to get creative in how we can get some educational material to you guys and kind of lead it. And I know we all prefer this, being in front of one another. Cindy, I did something, Julia, you definitely took me up on the offer. Jeremy, I think you may have came by when I hosted some viewings there in our staff department. And, with that and with the time we felt so comfortable together, some of the HBC members came too, I was able to just throw different scenarios out, and we could build on the material that the School of Government prepared. And I thought, we could apply it real world to some of our applications we have reviewed, and I think it worked well for you guys. We could even do something like that.
For me, it was much better having the discussion and asking questions. You listen to the videotapes and you answer the questions there, but then when you kind of put a real life curve into it, you really had to stop and think what exactly was the right way to do it. So I found that very helpful.
I felt pretty proud that I was even able to stump Leo a couple of times.
As you should be. Okay.
Okay, well, that gets me something to get going on. It really does.
All right. So I think I sent an email to everyone last night, and I had talked to Alex and Darren about a good meeting time for them, and the third week of the month is the best because they don't have a council meeting or planning and zoning to prepare for. And it doesn't have to be Thursday if you want it. If Thursdays, I don't know, is that a good for meeting space?
Just as long as it's not the, what, fourth Thursday? So third, I think we looked at the calendar, and we didn't see any conflicts with the third week, did we, Alex? I didn't, other than Tuesday.
Yeah.
Which
no,
is
Tuesday,
conflict.
Yeah, so it's most likely going to be a Wednesday or Thursday seems to be the best as far as the third week. If you look at the second week, that's where we start kind of getting backed up a little bit because there's a council meeting, then it's also following planning and zoning board and or a BOA meeting. There's not much agenda material we'd have to get prepared, of course, ahead of time for it, but still.
First thing, let's go through and see who is willing to meet on the third, sometime during the third week of the month, every other month, not every month, but every other month. And who would prefer to have an add-on to this meeting? And just find out everyone's preference. So I'll put Paul on the spot first, and he can, what is your preference?
Yeah, thanks for the notes yesterday. I think it was good to take a look at this, but, my time is valuable, just like everyone sitting there. But I'd be more concerned about making sure the tasks are done and done completely. So, yeah, I'm good with every other month. I'd be good with every month. And I think as we identify the tasks that are required that need to be completed before the moratorium deadline completes, I would feel much more comfortable to dedicate the time now to ensure that that objective is completed before the suspension of the moratorium. So yeah, I'd be willing to go every month. I'd be willing to go every month or every other month, and I'd be willing to go every month. Thank you.
Sonia?
I would prefer adding it on to the meetings.
Just keep it at one meeting a month?
Correct.
Okay. Julia?
Every other month is fine with me. Like Paul, I could go every month. I would prefer not to add it on to the meetings just because when Board of Adjustment meets, it can make for a really long night, and I've got 2 kids that I'm juggling.
Philip?
Every other month is fine with me, and I also prefer not to add it on, so a separate meeting would be my preference.
Okay. And would you be willing to do every month if it came to that, or would you prefer leaving it every other month?
I could probably make every month work. It would just really depend on the week with me.
Okay. Then we'll start with Matt. Of course, you already sent me yours, but you can tell it for the meeting.
Sure, I am in favor of every or every other, whatever's needed, and preference would be, on the not adding it on to the end of the meeting, but having a separate meeting. But I'll do either, if the group feels like it needs to be added on, but separate would be my preference.
David?
I have a conflict on Thursdays on the third week of every month.
Okay.
Other nights appear to be open. Every other month definitely could probably make every month work, but
Prefer every other month?
prefer every other month if possible.
Jack?
I think I'd prefer to add it on to the regular meeting.
Okay. Jeremy?
I would prefer to have an extra meeting as well. To me, I'm very flexible. I think Paul said it best. Every once a month or every other month. I think even if we had some absenteeism, we would still be moving it forward. And the day with me is no preference.
We have 2 that would prefer to just add it on. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 that are okay with an extra meeting.
And one thing we could consider too is if we're going to have an additional meeting every month, every other month, however the board decides, if there's a regular meeting schedule that we don't have an item for official action like today and Board of Adjustment doesn't have any other items, then that's just another one we can tack it back onto. We can certainly put that on this already advertised meeting. We can put the agenda on there. We're going to discuss or update on XYZ. So there still may be the potential for that depending on what applications, but we do know they're most likely going to be 2 within the coming 4 months that are initiated from from others, and potentially within 6 months, Darren, maybe another 1 or 2 amendments
Oh,
proposed by staff.
correct. I mean, once the small area plans start to form up a little bit, then we'll go through the process of, well, hopefully adopting the codes or the plans, which follows up with a form-based code. So that'll be adoption of official zoning amendments, so,
Those will come before us as well.
correct. But that'll be a little bit later. That's about 3 to 4 months out.
We'll do the option, I would say just do it every other month, so it's not too much. If needed, if we can do it during the regular meetings, we'll do it during the regular meetings. If there's something that we need to get done, then we can schedule a work session for that third week. So Thursdays don't work for you. Wednesdays should be fine. How about,
Possible, space it, space it out.
well, it'll be the third week.
Yeah, third week, so not meetings back-to-back days, because I have meetings Thursday nights for the next 2 years. It's another board. Yeah. Monday or Tuesday would be my preference.
I get, that's not council. I agree with him. Council's what, second and fourth, right? Yeah.
So Kelly's checking and making sure too, there's no like immediate known conflicts for meeting room reservations on those days of that third week.
How about those on Zoom? Do you have days that you can't do it or days that you prefer to do it? No? I see Julia shaking her head.
No preference. Any day works for me.
Okay. Philip?
No problem.
And is 4 o'clock a good time on whatever day we pick? Yes?
4 o'clock are the best times for me.
4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Good to get off work early. Absolutely.
So what day, we'll leave it up to you guys.
We can look,
Oh,
it's Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll get back to you.
well, we've got to go into recess.
Oh, so we got time? Have you, shoot, does Kelly find schedule?
There's a couple of conflicts we might need to work out,
Let's,
especially beginning in May, in the month of May, there seems to be. And then we're going to be heating up with budget again then too, so we might run into some conflicts, depending on what times of the day those work sessions will be prior to hearing and action by council on the budget.
yeah, let us research. We'll send out an email.
We got enough to go on now. Third week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe not Thursday for David.
Right. And I don't know that everybody has to participate in
That's
the work,
true.
in the work sessions either. If it doesn't work out for you, you know, if they want to help, they can do stuff at their own time, and then those who can get together. Is that,
Yeah, we're not taking action. This is purely work session. We'll handle it kind of the way we did with some of the tree development ordinance discussion that we had.
all right, so we'll determine the date and time later, and I think we need a motion to recess this meeting so that they can convene for Board of Adjustment at 4:30.
I would like to make a motion that we recess today's Planning and Zoning Board meeting and reconvene directly after the Board of Adjustment meeting.
Second?
And a second by Jack Farrell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
After Board of Adjustment. The Planning and Zoning Board meeting for March 4th, 2021. It is 5:55 PM. And I will turn the floor back over to Alex to continue with our general business discussion on updating the PDO.
It'll be it. Why don't you start it off? I'll play the color guy here, so.
Okay. All right, so kind of hard to pick back up after everything we just kind of went through. So, again, based on some of the conversations that we had with the joint meeting with council, you guys may recall I just started rattling off several items that staff's kind of identified from either a, if we got comp plan perspective, we've got to implement some strategies, other just administering and enforcing the current regulations in the PDO, or items that have come up, that have flooded the Board of Adjustment that might need to be looked at as potential revisions, as a legislative fix to it. We met, following up, we did meet with Cindy, and in the meantime, Darren and I worked together to create this list that Darren calls the PDO update matrix. And there's a couple items here we identified that we would like to get to work on sooner rather than later, and a couple of them that we would like to lean on you guys for some support and some help. One of them is implementing a new highway corridor overlay with development standards in those areas. And this is something that Darren has been working with, and it really came about as work of the Tri-Cities group, if I'm right, Darren.
Yep, and Jack will recall this because we brought some of this before the village council when he was on it. We touched on it a little bit. So that's something we're a little bit more, we're a little bit further along on that particular item. Before Alex gets a little bit further into it, this list that we created is just a list that Alex and I sat down and started looking at things based on our experience, based on the administration of the PDO, that things that we know, everyday issues that we'd like to clear up. There's some, and you'll see as we go over it, there's some comp plan strategy items in here that we want to address. But what I want to get across is this does not represent a comprehensive PDO update. This is not a comprehensive PDO update to this current document. A lot of this stuff is our lower level items, maintenance type items that we could do and work on at this point and get us ready for that. We can incorporate them into an overall PDO update, but this does not represent a comprehensive PDO update, nor does the process that we're laying out really get at doing a comprehensive PDO update. I think it gets us looking at and discussing some of the issues that we have with the PDO and keeps moving the ball forward, but it's not a PDO update. I still want to do a PDO update. We need to do a PDO update. I'm currently working on a PowerPoint presentation to prove that, or to show what I want to do and why I want to do it. But what we're really looking at is reformatting the way this PDO would look going forward. But that's not what this is. This is just to get us through some items that we think we need to address. There might be some items that P&Z members think that we could add on to the list. This is just our list, our starting point list that we can start looking at things on the list and start moving the ball forward. That for the future, for when we actually get this a part of a PDO update, we would propose that we'd move forward with some of these items as soon as we can, and that we would get those the ordinance amendments adopted and officialized and official as part of the PDO to keep moving this forward, while at the same time planning out the comprehensive PDO update in the hopefully near future. Alex, sorry. I told you I'd jump in there every once in a while.
What Darren said.
Question on that.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I think it was mentioned earlier, the moratorium and the small area plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's a firm that we're kind of waiting for them to come back after our public meeting with some of their findings. But I mean, a highway corridor item seems like that might be something that is particularly relevant for the small area plan at Pinehurst South, or, I mean, are there items on this list that kind of support the need for a moratorium that are worth focusing on?
It could. So if you look at the highway corridor overlay, that would apply to more than just NC Highway 5. We're looking at portions of 15501, potentially portions of 211, Midland Road, and Airport. So it's larger than just the small area plans. And with that update, and I do think we do have to keep NC5 in mind, But when we start to look at the highway corridor, it's really how far, when we're looking at how far is are the buildings going to be set back? Are we going to allow parking in there, and what kind of buffering is going to be proposed in there? What I can do to allow you to have a better understanding is if we choose to tackle that moving forward, which again, it's on my list, on our OFI list to move that forward. I can show, I'll lay out all the factors that we would be looking at in an ordinance. Again, we don't have to adopt it. I'm not sure if the small area plan would hold us back in that regard. One reason I would like to hold it back is that there's been some discussion on design standard, architectural standards, especially with respect to the OP zoning. There's a vast amount of OP zoning on 211 that's undeveloped. We have some stuff in the hospital district, in the hospital district area, and in Pioneer South. And I believe that case, what we're getting from the small area plans and the form-based code, I think we're going to be able to use that, especially with respect to the architectural standards. So I think making adjustments at this point to the OP zoning, I think that we might be getting ahead of the form-based, our planning effort with the small area plans. Again, doesn't mean that we can't look at it and start working on it, but I would personally like to see what's happening with the small area plans and the form-based code before we jump on the OP, on some of the OP stuff. I think it needs to get done. I think we need to make some adjustments, but I would like to see how far, what happens with that, with the small area planning, especially in that Pioneer South area, because I think there's a lot of similarities in that Pioneer South area to, maybe future development along 211 and in portions of that hospital district.
So Darren, to what extent has this list, I know you just put it out, so it's not likely, to what extent has this been reviewed with council and that they have stamped it, agreed or not agreed or changed the priority or something to that effect? Or do you plan to do that? Let me put it that way.
You're the first. I think the council understands a few of these. This is just something that we just briefly put together. I mean, we can share it with council. We just wanted to share it first to start with you, so we could start the ball rolling, because when we start talking about the updates, this is the body that's going to do a lot of that hard work to get it done. So that in mind, Jack, coming forward from today, we can share. I can share this with council. We just wanted to, this is a kind of our leaping off point, because you're right, this is going to have implications. If we move forward with the highway corridor overlay stuff, that's going to have some implications on staff time, your time, potentially their time. Given the amount of time that they're spending right now on a proposed tree development ordinance, you can see some of these other things that they're going to take a lot of time to get through. I would say on this list of things that we're working on right now that are in progress, if you go down to item 4, the Highway 160, the chapter 160D legislation, that's something we're working on right now, and we're working on it now because we have to. We have to because the law, the 160D legislation wants us to have everything in place by 7/1/21, so we're working on that right now. The other thing that we are working on as well is number 5, the electronic permitting. So what we want to do is adjust our requirements to require and make it mandatory that our online permit system be used for permits and for your planning applications and all that kind of stuff coming through. Alex, what else? Is there anything else on there that we're working on actively right now?
We've done some progress on the golf course that.
That's, I think Alex is going to jump on that one next, because that's another one that the BOA has seen several times in the past few years. We still have a number of vacant lots around golf courses. I was looking at the vacant lot layer today and going, yeah, we should probably, because if we don't adjust it, if we don't have that discussion, we're going to keep getting the requests coming through. So I think that was another priority that Alex personally had.
I know some of you weren't, I'm sorry.
Not afraid of people applying for variances, are we?
No. And that's part of what some of the analysis needs to be too. Back in August of last year, we had sort of an off month for an agenda. We needed a break, but I gave an update to the board at that time on where we stood on the tree landscape requirements, and also on talk about the golf course setbacks. There's been several instances in where there were many peculiarities with the lots that ended up proposing a variance based on the fact that they abutted golf course or golf course zoned property, but really didn't abut a golf course. And they had 2, maybe 3 lot lines that abutted such. So there was, and the board did find that there were some definite unnecessary hardships with say a 60-foot setback applying on three sides, or 3 30-foot setbacks applying on a 10,000 or 11,000 square foot lot. So what we were able to do with our GIS analyst at the time, we've gotten a new one, and I have not, unfortunately, had much time to sit down with them, is they were able to go through and basically map and identify all the properties in our jurisdiction that are A, currently vacant, and B, front not only on one side, but 2 sides on golf course property. So then we could take that and look at that and analyze. This is where we're talking, we could use some help from you guys. Cindy's already given some input.
Interesting, yep.
Yep, so we could take a look and see if it's an area that it's clearly heavily wooded. There's, let's say, a small pond or something on the side that that won't ever become part of golf course proper field of
Depends
play,
on
if
the
you
quality
will.
of the players too, whether they can keep the ball in play. too.
Well, we're not talking about folks like myself or Darren out there.
We're going to maintain a setback to take care of that.
You may need a bigger setback.
So, and one item that I've kept running through my head is maybe if there's a caveat or something we can formulate or draft to put in there that based on conditions such as X or Y, and there'll be at least a minimum distance of X or ABC feet, then only one golf course setback will apply. Or you can keep that same distance, but it's got to be measured from here to there. Not necessarily saying out of bounds markers, but if you could, if it could be justified enough, then every other area, if you can't meet something that's so clearly obvious, then yeah, your relief valve is coming before the Board of Adjustment. So there's always that backstop, but again, this isn't saying we need to fix it. It's, this is an item that's been popping up a lot. Let's go into it further. Obviously, a lot of the lots that are left here are becoming challenging, and that kind of gets into, there's another one. What reference number is it here? 15. There's been some preliminary conversations that I've been having with DEQ staff. Darren's had some very recently as well. Back in the fall of 2019, there was a new permit that's been required by the Department of Environmental Quality, the construction stormwater permit. Matt's over there shaking his head, so whenever we get to working on that one, he's raising his hand to volunteer heavily. But it maybe look at requiring a submission at time of single-family development that you have to have a review and a permit by DEQ beforehand to try to help mitigate any erosion or stormwater runoff issues, as we've been having quite a bit, which directly correlates to the weather we've been having as well.
Yeah, well, that's a super big deal, as you know, in the community, is stormwater management.
It is. You see it all over in the comp plan.
I'd move that up in the priority too.
I think, and again, these numbers are not a
They're
priority.
not priority.
However, I'm trying to see.
So you have
There's a medium
no lack of things to work on.
That's true.
Number one. You're going to review this with council. There's a number of items that are kind of operational type of items that they probably will be less, I wouldn't say interested in, but
Propane tank equivalent in size.
less relevant to their decision-making process. But some are pretty big, like corridor standards and so forth. I know there's varying feelings as to whether corridor standards can in fact be effective, considering how deep they can go into lots and so forth, versus modifying uses and so forth.
Well, as far as council goes, my thought was, in our joint meeting, it was obvious that they wanted us to do PDO updates.
Right.
And so to give staff and board members an opportunity to figure out how much time they could commit to it and a process that we could
Great.
look at, we would nail that down before we bothered them, because they've got plenty of stuff on their plate as well. So it isn't that we were not going to tell them, it was just a matter of, getting our ducks in a row first. So,
No, I didn't mean to imply that. I was just curious as to whether or not they've been
So
able.
absolutely, I mean, that was part of the joint meeting,
Right,
so
right, right.
that's why we're working on it.
Well, I can tell you with the highway corridor standards, that's sitting right on my OFI list in my department, my department strategy book, or part of the SOP. So Jack, you know what OFIs are.
Now, the county just revised theirs, didn't they?
Uh,
Or in the process?
Did they bring it to the vote? I don't
I
think,
think they keep,
they keep pushing it back.
I
don't
think,
they?
I think it's,
It's been on
It's
the
being
table for a
tabled,
long time,
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
right.
I think it's staying on the shelf right now.
Zoom, the people on Zoom want to make any comments? Okay. I've just been watching you and not checking for hands waving, so I thought.
Julie's ready.
The one other, before, Julie, just the one other thing, before we move forward with any of this stuff, this is just our first blast at getting something before you.
Great.
If we're, and you can see, if you look at the matrix, you can see when we started to identify the matrix, if you go into the level of, the level of effort and the priority, those are things like, if it's a low, if we're just changing a dimensional standard, that's generally a low level of effort. It doesn't take us a lot. But if we're designing corridor standards, that is a medium or high level of effort. So it's going to be there's going to be a lot of work associated with it. So just bear in mind that. And again, if we've missed something, if you think that there's something glaring that we can get through, that, something that we can tinker on, we're, ask us to add it to the list, and we'll add it to the list. We can start picking things off here. We can start prioritizing some of these things and start working on them. That's why it's here before you today, because, we need to start taking that first step. I need some help. We need some help, some guidance.
So Darren, some of these level of effort low items are maybe as simple as text amendments that come down to changing a word, a paragraph, or a phraseology and so forth. I mean, why can't those all be bunched together and submitted as one? Because the county does this, as you well know. Why can't they be bunched together and submitted as one package as early as possible?
Somebody.
The easy question, but the hard answer.
Well, because somebody literally has to sit down and write all the code and make all the adjustments.
Right.
We are currently doing that with the 160D related. You're going to see a package of amendments coming forward. We were hoping actually to have it on this meeting, but we fell behind doing some other things. So the 160D there's going to be a lot of changes. And then the online permitting system, there's a lot of other things associated with that. We're going to bring those two items to you in a large package. So what you're talking about with the other things, we can do that too. We just have to identify all those things that need to get done.
Okay.
But some of them are more easier than others.
Oh, I understand.
So some dimensional standards people aren't going to mind, and some golf course setbacks might really,
that isn't in the.
No, I'm just putting it out for example.
Right.
And to Alex's point before, there's no house next to the golf course that's safe for me. And funny story, this last weekend, the variance that you guys all approved on Rockland, I think I put my ball up into that yard. So, and I was thinking about that as I was going over to pick it up. So,
This is still being recorded, right?
what was that?
This is still being recorded. That's just, I want to read
No,
that.
I didn't cause any damage.
Glass breaking. Okay.
So, I'm sorry, Julia, I jumped in.
You mean Cindy?
No. Alex thought you were ready to jump in and comment earlier. And
About 30
Darren
minutes to go.
started.
Yeah, before I got into it, sorry.
So they thought you had something you wanted to say.
No,
No?
just enjoying the general discussion. I'm fine.
All right. Paul?
No, I'm good, Cindy, thank you.
And Philip? Okay.
No comment.
So is it, you know, is there a thought that, how you want to move forward with any of this stuff? Should we have another meeting on it? Let you kind of think about it? Give us some of your thoughts on other items that maybe we should consider, and we can reformat that list and come back. We're going to continue to work. We're continuing to work on 160D. We're continuing to work on the online permit center, and I'm continuing to put information together relative to the highway corridor standards. So those are things that we're actively moving on right now.
And there's items that we can help you with on those, I'm assuming.
The highway corridors, I'm going to need help. We can't develop that one in a vacuum. We've taken it all the way through the Tri-Cities group, and, you know, we came up with a bunch of agreed upon standards, which really became, you know, Southern Pines has their code, they're not changing it. Aberdeen has their code, they're not really going to change it. So it's really, you know, it's going to be, we don't really have an highway corridor overlay ordinance. We used to, but we don't have that anymore. So it's really, it would be up to us to take that next step.
So you're saying the prospect of a common highway overlay corridor ordinances through Aberdeen, Southern Pines, and Pinehurst is going to be difficult to obtain, is that correct?
I think we can have some consistency, but there's not going to be a uniform standard.
Okay, all right. I mean, that was the hope at one time, right?
That's why we have the minimum agreed upon standards. And I think we can get very close to some of the Southern Pines corridor standards, because some of our corridors look alike. Aberdeen, actually, when Aberdeen rewrote their UDO, they removed all overlays. So they don't have an overlay, so it's all in their different districts. And we haven't really done an analysis of each of their different districts, because that kind of changed during the process. So I think when we lay it out, when we have a matrix of that too, and we'll share all the agreed upon standards, and that chart will show all the other standards in the different districts. Sorry, this mess just keeps coming down.
Would you propose that we maybe focus an attack on the highway corridors initially with maybe one of the work sessions, or do you think we should probably break into, subgroups or something and attack the top two you have?
I think that's a perfect opportunity for discussion on that point. Does the whole body of the whole have to work on each of these items? Could we break off into a small group, one member work with a couple of us, or two? You know, I think that's a point of discussion that we need to have.
But then you're back into the issue that was brought forward, that each one of these separate groups has to be identified and advertised and recorded and so forth. Is that correct?
Doesn't it depend on how many of us are in the group?
Not if we don't have a quorum.
No. If we have a PDO update work session that is advertised either on the night of our meeting or, you know, on a separate identified meeting, and then the PDO updates we just have to report on all of those, but people can talk to each other and work on things independently and then come back together at a public meeting and do the presentations of.
No question independently, but if they form a subcommittee of any type, then it becomes a little more complex.
It does.
Is that correct?
You're correct. Jack, you're correct. It's more complex. And we don't have a good answer right now.
Should we use one of our working
There will be no
sessions that we're going to have and focus directly on maybe the highway
I think that
corridor first, maybe initially?
that's going to take the most amount. That one will have the most impacts, because you're going to be affecting setbacks, landscaping, lighting, all those type of things. So I think if you're looking at the list of something that should involve, you know, the broader group, that is one of them. We could accomplish some of that at work sessions. I don't think we need to break off into a subcommittee to do that. And we can be prepared to do that at our next meeting. We can get you that materials. Again, I haven't shared this, Jack. I haven't shared this strategy with council yet. I will run it by them, but I think they were just interested in, there's been some desire to start working on updating section of this ordinance.
And then we're
Hitting on all these different areas of the PDO. One person could be working on setbacks, one could be working on landscaping, whatever. and meeting with you independently to find out the best resources, and they can go and do their research and bring it back to the meeting. So that we're not everything has to be done in the meeting itself, but we go and gather the information and then do a presentation during that meeting.
Based on whatever items we happen to be working on at the time. We can't tackle, from a staff level perspective, we can't tackle a number of items at once at this point. There's too much going on in this community and in the office that we can't. So that's part of the reason why we wanted to get a list to you, just so we could start prioritizing and go, okay, we're done with amend to permit up to 6 stories in the hospital district. Let's get that off the list. So, and part of it was, start developing that list so we can start ticking things off the list. And then again, showing, what is that level of effort that we need to do that. So we could do all the low ones, and like Jack said, we might be able to package the low ones into an overall update. So I guess we can assess that as well. And some of you might not even agree with us. I mean, Alex and I, we have our ideas, but we have not talked to you about each and every one of the strategies here. We haven't gone down each of this list yet, have we? We did an overview of it, right? I'm not suggesting we do that right now.
Some of these engineering issues.
Some of them are engineering. Yes.
Okay. So you're lumping them under the PDO because the PDO.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not ESSM, but they do have, there are some engineering impacts such as the stormwater. The stormwater would be tied up in
What I was
engineering.
thinking, yeah, right, sure.
But good point, breaking off again, we have number 16 on the list, is updating the fence regulations. That's something that, we still have trouble every once in a while administering that code. So we think that, should we look at the fence standards again to see if they're working the way we thought they were going to be working? So this list, if we could start prioritizing this list and actually developing, right now, things are not in a priority order. But if we can start getting them in a priority order, it'll give us a strategy to start getting some of these things done.
What kind of timeline do you think is needed for us if we went heavy towards the highway corridor overlay districts? What kind of timeline do you think would be needed for us?
Do I need to use the tree ordinance?
A long time.
No.
So that could monopolize a lot of it.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, 3 years.
No, I think we can come up with a decent proposal. I think that one's far enough along that we could probably do that in 2 to 3 meetings.
Okay.
And you see, it's 2 to 3 meetings. You see how that pushes us out. We're gonna be at the latter part of the year. That's for just one ordinance update. We're still working on those other 2 because we need to get those done. But when you start to schedule these things out from a capacity standpoint, highway corridor overlay, it's going to be at least 2 to 3, a minimum of 2 to 3 meetings for discussion.
Well, I think if we utilize some of our work sessions, then we have to prioritize versus training, of course, and in our time for those work sessions. However, I think if we did use some of our work sessions and if staff came with something you wanted to achieve for that day, I think we would be able to work, or would we be able to work towards maybe achieving that for that day and then moving to the next step? I mean, I'm just thinking in my head, I like to attack, the higher priority stuff first, but I'm just trying to get an idea of how much time we're biting off.
Well, there's high priority and then there's level of effort. And so those 2 you gotta look at. If it's, I guess, is there a high priority but a low? Probably not. Oh yeah, high, low.
There is.
Yeah,
We're already working on that.
I hear what you're saying, Jeremy, and I also think on the, do things first that can make your list shorter.
Yeah.
To have, early wins and then you move forward, but probably whatever balances best with y'all's workload, in whichever direction that would be, knowing that the small area plan is, I don't know, is there a timeline on when the next phase for that?
We've moved into phase 2 on it, so we are still on schedule. The schedule right now, we're anticipating and we still have our public meetings, we still have another public workshop. We haven't developed conceptual plans yet, but if I'm going back off the plan schedule, the plan was to have something into our hands from a review and adoption standpoint, July 1st. I don't think we're going to meet that. I just knowing what I know about planning, something's going to waylay us along the way. But we are still looking July, August to get something into your hands. That's after we've gone through public workshops and conceptual planning and all that.
Darren, can you explain what cross-reference impacts means and give me a little help with that?
Alex will do that. The code is like a spider web, right, Alex?
Yeah, so it's like 160D, for instance, is high cross-level impacts, meaning there's sections that would reference, this, and then also have to go back and re-reference it in another section, or like you can think of like a rippling effect. If you change the wording in this section, then it applies through 3 or 4 other sections.
For instance, when we did the tree ordinance, because there are so many cross-references, we had to rewrite those 2 entire sections and renumber them. And it does, so it has, depending on what we do, will have different impacts and require updates in other parts of the code.
So something with a low cross-reference impact would be just changing one dimensional requirement or something to that effect. Is that right?
One section, like one, maybe even just one specific part in one sentence.
Adding one word like heated.
Yep, in the definitions.
I mean, I'd also go down to number 12. Number 12 would be, and again, we didn't prioritize these things, but things that I think create consternation in the community, create consternation when we're doing plan reviews is number 12, our lighting standards. It's a medium level of effort, has low cross-reference, we didn't put a priority on there, but it's something that we would think needs to get updated. And we've heard that from more than one person. We've heard that from various council members. We've heard that from people in the community, that they're concerned with some of our lighting standards. And we think our lighting standards need to be upgraded.
And the bleed over of lighting and so forth. Is that what you mentioned?
Correct,
Okay.
yep.
Okay, so we've got the board has agreed that they will meet every other month if needed, or will meet at a regular meeting if we don't have a public hearing or Board of Adjustment meeting, so it won't be like we'll be here forever. And we'll use this list to begin with. And are you going to identify items that we can do before the first workshop, or are we going to just do all the work in the workshop? How do you see this working?
Well, we have to figure out what are we going to start working on first. And again, if I was proposing something, but again, this is Darren, and it's because of what's on my work program, I would work on highway corridor overlay standards first, because to me, that one's the farthest along at this point. And it's a priority on my department. We could get ready and do something on that at the next meeting.
I think that would be good, just because we sort of need to know how this is going to work and operate. And if you've got something that's already pretty far down the road and you can identify what we need to do for it, that'll sort of help us understand what we're going to have to do in the future for the other ones, in my opinion. Do you all?
And if we need to add to this list, and we do need to add to this list, that's also why it's before you. If there's things that we're missing, you guys, I know you're not in it every day, but based on some of your experience with it, I'm sure let us know what you think. Is there something that we could have, and we talked about this at the joint meeting, is there something that we could have learned from on the variance on the variance review tonight that we need to update anything in our application standards? During the meeting, I pulled out and I made some potential, changes that we could look at. Is there something that we need to do with our intake process? Yeah, yes, I understand that. But is there something that we need to do in that regard?
Okay, so can we kind of come to a close, or is there something more you want to discuss, or?
Well, I mean, do you want to have a meeting right away at the end of March?
Well, we're going to have Board of Adjustment on the 11th.
I'm not ready. I can't be ready.
It would be difficult to know when Board of Adjustment would wrap up and when we could start.
You said you would know in 2 weeks whether we're going to have a public hearing in April. So if,
Yeah, that's-
once you know that if we're not going to have the public hearing in April, can we just plan to do it at the April meeting?
We could plan on, if the item is not on the April meeting, what we could do is, yes, we could put it on that meeting. If it is on that meeting, what we could do is we could have our first special meeting in April. How's that? Yep, the third week.
And find out a date and time.
Yep,
for-
that way it gives us a little extra time to prepare.
It'll either be on April 8th, which the meeting is the second Thursday of the month in April, because the first falls on a Thursday, correct? So it would be the second and then the third week in April.
Sure, the one month that's off, sure.
But,
And this will also give us a little bit more time to mature this list a little bit. We can share it with council. And if you guys have any suggestions, you can email us some of those suggestions that you might have.
got the sections of the PDO listed on each of these, we can go view them and look at them and, become familiar with them as well.
So how would this work then, Darren? You would, let's take corridor overlays issues. You would bring forward, a statement of the issue or what you tend to accomplish, and maybe where you stand on it right now, the 2 or 3 alternative ways to approach it and/or text that you've developed or find elsewhere. And we would then start to refine that distilling that into our own type of
Correct.
standard to be applied to the PDO. That's the way that would work.
Correct, we're taking the raw clay and then remove it into a,
But you would give us just something to start with. so
correct.
we-
Yeah, you're not, it's incumbent upon us to do some basic level research and come up with some basic proposals to
Right,
float
so
it
we
before you.
have some form already.
Correct.
Of some nature. Okay, great,
Correct.
good, yeah.
And I think we are far enough along that we can have a decent discussion on that, where we think it should apply and how it will look. So I think we're far enough along.
And would you want us to read and study the PDO sections associated with that before we come?
It's going to be relatively easy because we don't really have any right now. So,
Would it be helpful to review what used to be?
let me get that information to you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Which one? No, we've got to get them material.
I have-
You're not going to get, we're not going to, I'm not going to, you're not going to get, we're not going to hand that out at the work. The idea is I'm going to give you enough time to get you that material at least a week out to study. So we'll get it to you.
since you,
And Alex is right, we'll get that agreed upon. We'll get you all the Tri-City stuff, we'll get to you ahead of time, along with the map, hopefully the maps.
and thinking about the fact that the April meeting is the second Thursday, maybe it would be better to, since you were saying the end of March, would it be better to do it on April 1st? Or is that going to, so we're meeting on the 1st and the 8th?
No, potential. What? Oh, we did, no, we,
So for those of you who couldn't hear Kelly, when we adopted the meeting schedule earlier or at the end of last year, it was to not conflict with Passover and and Good Friday was that, yeah,
So it is scheduled for April 8th.
the regular meeting is scheduled for the
Okay,
8th.
so I didn't.
oh, good point.
Missed that.
Thank you. I was just going to say I'm out of town for Passover on the 1st, so thank you.
Okay, so I guess that's a no.
I mean,
I mean, it's up to the board to decide. I mean, if, you know, we certainly don't have to have everyone participate, but we don't want to, you know, exclude anyone just because of, you know, we value everyone's opinion, so. I think but what we're hearing, especially if we're going to advertise for a special meeting, we've got time to try to nail down a date.
if we go April 1st or we go the week after April, we're still running you 2 weeks in a row. So,
Yeah.
so,
And let's just wait and see if the resort is ready to come before planning and zoning on the 8th.
good, give us a little bit more breathing time. Good.
And you'll know that in a couple of weeks.
Yep, we will. We will. But yeah, there's going to be some heavy lifting sessions ahead of you, ahead of planning and zoning coming up.
Nice to get this stuff ahead of all of that, because it'll take some time to review all those documents and prepare for those meetings. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, just again, if there's any other things that you can see that we could add to this list, and any that you might see as particularly important.
Probably has a whole list.
Oh, there's people out there, I know, there's lots of opinions on what we need to be working on, and I don't disagree with any of them. It's just a matter of getting them into the system, and what, some really need to be done as part of that comprehensive update. I think that our sign ordinance needs some updating because of some changes at the federal level with respect to court cases. I think that our subdivision standards really need to be upgraded, and I think we need to pull that out as a separate chapter in the PDO. So, but those are really comprehensive, and I think we need to do that as part of the comprehensive update. That's not a little one-off thing. It's one-off doing subdivision regs, but that is probably 6 months worth of work.
Maybe you need to make a second list of what needs to be updated with the comprehensive updates.
I'm working on that. I told you, I'm working on a PowerPoint.
All right. Does anyone else have any comments? It'd be kind of nice to get out of here.
Yeah, I would just add, maybe we add another column or penciled in, but we start putting some dates beside those tasks. I'm afraid if we don't start to milestone that, the time could slip away from us. Thanks.
Paul's correct.
That's a great idea, Paul. I don't know if we can do it on the first one, if we have to see how long it takes and what the process is, but there's no harm in putting it out there just to.
Well, we can do it, based on a priority list that we start to put this into a priority order. And then again, you have to look at the level of effort that's required. So if we're looking at highway corridors, that's going to probably take, I think, probably 3 months to get through. So then we have to start looking at the list and you're right, milestoning it out. And we'll have to take a look at that because some of these things are more complicated than others and will take more time.
So maybe a time estimate on them? Go ahead.
Priority, maybe the priority really is, like Jack had mentioned, it's some of the lower hanging fruit. It's easier. It's a confident target for us to get in the groove of it versus taking on the highest priority, most complex, because then that may drag us down and just not work time-wise for us.
That's a good point. Well, I think this is a good start on I think we're starting the head in the direction I think that everybody was talking about as far as trying to get this into a manageable format. So I think, we've started this, we're gonna reformat this and build this a little bit better with your help, but,
Well, I think the goal is to make this into a process that we can move forward with. It was my understanding from meeting with council, so we got to start somewhere. I think this is a great place to start.
and correct, and this is just one part of what I need help on, this is this PDO stuff. There's other comprehensive plan items that if you can remember that matrix of those implementation strategies, there's a lot of other things that we need help on that's not just PDO related. It's doing other planning activity. I can't even think of what they are right now, but there's a number of other ones that we're gonna have to figure out how to tackle if we're gonna move this, this planning document forward.
Did anyone have any other comment, or would anyone? Our next meeting date, regular meeting, is Thursday, April 8th, which is the second Thursday of the month. And there is a possibility that we will have a public hearing for the new Pinehurst Resort Hotel. So I'll be communicating with you and as soon as Darren finds out Alex, whether they meet their deadline or not. And so, no other business? Would someone? Darren?
I've got them.
I told you this is when it really starts up.
Next Tuesday, the tree buffer ordinance will be going forward to the council in the public hearing. They won't be able to take action because it'll be done via the electronic format, so they won't be able to take action, but it's going before them. And if you hadn't watched last week, the HPC did approve the COA for the lodge. So that's just my two little brief add-ons. I'm done now. Oh, by the way, no.
Well, there may be a potential for BOA to meet in April as well.
More good news. Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Go ahead. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. This meeting is adjourned.